Philippines. Every August 19th, we observe World Humanitarian Day to pay tribute to humanitarian workers and highlight the importance of giving assistance to people in crisis. For this year, the United Nations is marking this day with a campaign called #NoMatterWhat. And to tell us more about this, we have Gustavo Gonzalez. He is the resident coordinator of the United Nations and humanitarian coordinator in the Philippines. So good morning, Gustavo. Thank you so much for being here. Now, this is such an important day, this observance for people around the world. So maybe you can start off by telling us about its relevance. What it really is the purpose of this day?
Hey, thank you, Ria, for having me. Definitely, every time we refer to the 19th of August, we go back to what happened 19th of August 2003 in Baghdad, Iraq. A very sad and tragic moment where the UN headquarters in Baghdad was attacked. And then we lost 22 UN staff. One of them was Sergio Vieira de Mello.
I've seen the movies about his life.
Exactly, Sergio, emblematic person, a leader within the UN, highly committed to human rights, to humanitarian assistance, humanitarian values. So, and then the UN General Assembly decided to use this day for the commemoration of the World Humanitarian Day. For us, and particularly for my generation, I had the opportunity of meeting Sergio Vieira de Mello, and I had colleagues and friends that were impacted by this tragedy. So even for me, emotionally, it's a quite particular day. And of course, we pay tribute to the thousands of humanitarian workers that sacrificed their life to bring relief and humanitarian assistance to, in many crises.
Right, so such an important day, and one for you, one that's actually quite personal. Okay, now the context of #NoMatterWhat, that's the campaign this year. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, no matter what means that despite of the challenges that we have, despite the increasing numbers of conflict, despite the increasing numbers of forced displacement, humanitarian workers, the humanitarian community is ready and there to support. So you know that the key values of humanitarian assistance refer to humanity, neutrality, independence, and it means that beyond the reasons of a conflict, beyond the political challenges, we are expected to bring solidarity and support in time of crisis. So, and of course, being a humanitarian worker is not an easy task. Sometimes, as is happening in Baghdad, Iraq, we can be targeted. And then, let's say, this day is paying tribute to all of them. And no matter what means that more than ever we need to display solidarity in front of crisis.
Right, and speaking of crises, there's numerous instances of escalating conflicts around the world. These don't always make it to mainstream media. We're not able to report everything here, even on our program, but you see a lot of it on social media. Now, how does the UN address all of these conflicts?
Well, Ria, first of all, we have to admit that we are in very difficult times, and we just look at the statistics. The numbers of conflict, the numbers of displaced people, is showing that let's say the humanitarian system is even overstretched. So what? And in the case of the Philippines, and you know better than me, the Philippines is a country that is exposed to numbers of shocks from super typhoons, some localized conflict in the south. That means that what we are learning is more than ever, we need to join forces. The humanitarian assistance this day is not just the responsibility of humanitarian workers. We have an increasing numbers of civil society organizations, NGOs, the private sector that are part of the responses, humanitarian responses. We have to admit that what is new, and I think for the past 20 years, all conflict, all crises, in some way they are interrelated.
Right.
We have war in Ukraine, and it's immediately affecting food prices. It's immediately affecting food security in Africa. We have conflict in Mali that is impacting on Burkina Faso, just a few weeks ago in Niger, and this is increasing the numbers of forced migrants going to Europe. So this is the big challenge, that everything is interrelated. And when we look at the figures, we have this increasing numbers of humanitarian needs, and unfortunately, not always is supported by the same level of funding.
Right.
So we learn that we need to join forces, capacities, resources, and the Philippines is a great example where we still have this whole of society response. No?
Right.
So in some way, we are, all of us, the UN, proud of being working in the Philippines. That is in some way an example of the new generation of humanitarian assistance.
That's great to hear. And as humanitarian workers, you really work at the community level, right? So in relation to WHD commemoration, the UN is also preparing its initiatives to make affected communities more resilient, especially during disasters, as you were talking about. So what is this Enhancing Resilient Communities, or ERC, strategy exactly?
One of the things that we are learning, and there is a famous report was released just last year, is in this report a group of experts, they were asking communities what is their perception of humanitarian assistance. And three conclusions that are part of our work. The first one is that sometimes people, they don't feel part of the decision-making process. They say, well, you know, this type of support was decided not in my community, it was decided in New York, was decided in Manila. The second thing that we are learning is that people say at the community level, you come here and you always ask for needs and vulnerabilities. You are not taking into account my capacities, my assets, my strengths. I can offer something. It's not just that I'm, you know, the subject of needs. And the third thing is sometimes these communities, they receive support and they are saying, well, but what about the recovery? Why recovery is taking too much time? So we are learning from that. And one of the conclusions that in fact is common sense is, let us put communities at the decision-making process. Let us understand what really they need and they can propose. And this new ERC initiative, Enhancing Resilient Communities, is all about what is happening at the barangay level. It's making sure that the captains of barangay, they are part of the process in the planning, that humanitarian assistance takes into account all of this huge decentralization of the Mandana Garcia's ruling, and we expect to transform the Philippine case in something that, you know, in some way, it will be the contribution of this country to the whole of the humanitarian community.
Oh, that is fantastic. And really, it's so important to empower these communities, as you said, not just dole out assistance. Okay, before I let you go, Gustavo, you have another upcoming event, the Dialogue on Humanitarian Initiatives, that's happening at the Asian Institute of Management. Tell us about that and how people can participate if they're interested.
Yeah, this is another example where we are trying to bring also the academe and the private sector to the discussion on humanitarian assistance. We have this fantastic initiative with the Asian Institute of Management. We will have a panel, Secretary Rex Gachlian, the head of the Department of Social Welfare and Development, quite dynamic leader in humanitarian assistance, will be conveying the keynotes. And the panel will be around communities, how we can learn from some creative solutions that communities are offering, and the humanitarian country team will be invited. We expect also that members of the Asian Management Institute will be there, members of the government, and the main objective is precisely to learn from each other with a strong focus on the role of resilient communities.
All right. Thank you so much for speaking with us here today, Gustavo Gonzalez. We do appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ria.